Good morning. Welcome back to the Catholic Poetry Show. I am your host, Ryan Kreger, the completely unqualified Catholic layman who is not academic but likes to read poetry and talk about it. Today, we are going to read a poem by Robert Browning, a romantic poet who I think has somewhat been eclipsed by his wife, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, who gives us the sonnets from the Portuguese. The reason why we're reading this poem is because one of my kids is supposed to be reading it for school, and I wasn't able to find a recording that I liked. We'll talk about that after I read the poem. But the poem is How They Brought the Good News from Ghent to Aix. I sprang to the stirrup, and Joris and he. I galloped, Dirk galloped, we galloped all three. Good speed, cried the watch as the gate bolts undrew. Speed, echoed the wall to us galloping through. Behind shut the postern, the lights sank to rest, and into the midnight we galloped abreast. Not a word to each other, we kept the great pace, neck by neck, stride by stride, never changing our place. I turned in my saddle and made its girths tight, then shortened each stirrup and set the peak right, rebuckled the cheap strap, chained slacker the bit, nor galloped less steadily, Roland a wit. 'Twas moonset at starting, but while we drew near Lochran, the coxcrew, and twilight dawned clear. At boom a great yellow star came out to sea. At Duffeld 'twas morning as plain as could be. And from Mechlin church steeple we heard the half chime. So Joris broke silence with, "Yet there is time." At Ayrshot upleaped of a sudden the sun, and against him the cattle stood black every one, to stare through the mist at us galloping past. And I saw my stout galloper Roland at last, with resolute shoulders each butting away the haze as some bluff river headland did spray. And his low head and crest just one each sharp ear bent back for my voice, and the other pricked out on his track. And one eye's black intelligence, ever that glance saw its white edge at me, his own master askance. And the thick heavy spume flakes which I and anon his fierce lips shook upwards and galloping on. By Hasselt, Dirk groaned, cried Joris, "Stay spur, your roop scallops bravely, the fault's not in her, we'll remember at Aix." For one heard the quick wheeze of her chest, saw the stretched neck and staggering knees, and sunk tail and horrible heave of the flank, as down on her haunches she shuddered and sank. So we were left galloping, Joris and I, past Lewes, past Tongres, no cloud in the sky. The broad sun above laughed a pitiless laugh, neath our feet broke the brittle bright stubble like chaff, till over by Dalamus Tome spire sprang white, and "Gallop!" gasped Joris, "for Aix is in sight! How they'll greet us!" And all in a moment his roan rolled neck and crop over, lay dead as a stone. And there was my Roland to bear the whole weight of the news which alone could save Aix from her fate, with his nostrils like pits full of blood to the brim, and circles of red for his eye sockets' rim. Then I cast loose my buff coat, each holster let fall, shook off both my jack boots, let go belt and all, stood up in the stirrups, leaned, patted his ear, called my Roland his pet name, my horse without peer, clapped my hands, laughed and sang, any noise, bad or good, till at length into Aix Roland galloped and stood. And all I remember is friends flocking round, as I sat with his head twixt my knees on the ground, and no voice but was praising this Roland of mine, as I poured down his throat our last measure of wine, which the burgesses voted by common consent was no more than his due, who brought good news from Kent. Now, despite a couple of interruptions, that's more or less how I think it should be read. It's most of the people on YouTube who read it are reading it far too slowly, I think. It is about a gallop, and like almost the first word is galloped. You have to read it at a gallop. You have to read it at almost a breakneck pace where you're going to trip over the words, you're going to stumble. Don't have much time for a lot of commentary. I got things to do this morning. I have to go to work. But technically, this is an amazing poem. It's written in broadly anapestic meter. So an anapest is kind of a galloping rhythm. Da 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 da. I sprang to the stirrup, and Joris and he. Although in the first line, I sprang da da to the stirrup, da 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 da, and Joris da da da, and he. There's an iamb at the end to close out the line. But he does And he does break up the rhythm in certain places, most noticeably here in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sixth stanza. One heard the quick wheat when the horse dies. By Hasselt Dirk groaned and cried Joris, stay spur, your roos galloped bravely, the fault's not in her. Will remember it aches, for one heard the quick wheeze of her chest, saw the stretched neck and staggering knees. He breaks the rhythm here, and sunk tail and horrible heave of the flank, as down on her haunches she shuddered and sank. It's just a brilliant little metrical device there. He's galloping along in this anapestic tetrameter, and then all of a sudden he just throws in these offbeats, and saw the stretched neck and staggering knees. And you can almost, in the change of rhythm, you can almost see the horse galloping, and all of a sudden stumble, slow down, fall behind, and sink, and just beautiful, absolutely brilliant. And another metrical device that he uses, which I love, is this very last stanza. Till at length into Aix Roland galloped and stood. And stood ends with a hard d, with a consonant, d, which naturally lends to a stop, a full stop, a sense of finality. And then he continues with, and all I remember is, and all. So the stressed beat of this syllable is an all, which up to now he's been using words or beats that naturally lend themselves to a rapid cadence, called my Roland his pet name, my horse without peer, clapped my hands, laughed and sang, any noise, bad or good.
Dad,
yes?
Why isn't your phone up there?
Because I'm trying to talk about poetry on my phone. Do you think that's a good idea? Okay. But here in this last stanza, he throws, the first stressed beat is all, and all I remember. All is a word that lends itself.
Are you reading?
Yes, I'm reading this.
I like to read this.
You like to read this? Oh, good. And all I remember. All is a word that naturally lends itself well to a sort of elongated cadence. And what he's doing is he's slowing the meter down. Is all I remember is, and then there's a long hyphen, friends flocking round. He's taken it this galloping breakneck pace all the way through the poem, and then at the very last stanza he slows everything down and brings this poem to a very satisfying conclusion, despite the fact that at no point does Browning ever tell us what the good news was. All we know is that it got there. He also doesn't tell us whether the horse Roland lived or died. At the last we see, the horse is laying on the ground, the rider is holding the horse's head in his lap, and he's pouring wine down the horse's throat, which, lucky horse, right? Presumably, the journey is entirely fictitious, I suppose, but presumably there was Aix is under siege or is about to be under siege, and they're planning on surrendering unless they get this news, whatever it is. Likely that somebody is planning to come to their defense and lift the siege. I don't know. Either way, great poem. The context, the fictitious context behind it is less important than Browning's masterful use of meter and almost onomatopoeia to drive this poem to match the rhythm and the sound to the story.